There was fear inside the palace, because the dynasty was collapsing. From Shang to Qing, a 4,000-year-old order was nearing its end. And China's last dynasty was fading into darkness. China had been ruled by dynasties for centuries. Empires rose, wars were fought, yet the system survived. And this civilization became the longest-lasting political system in history. But now, that order was collapsing. 1368, a peasant seized the throne of China. Zhu Yuanzhang grew up in poverty. He became a monk, then a rebel. And the Ming Dynasty was born. Hongwu was a ruthless emperor. He executed thousands of officials. But he rebuilt agriculture. And China began to rise again. Yongle opened China to the seas. And Zheng He commanded the greatest fleet on earth. Chinese ships reached the coasts of Africa. But then, China closed its doors to the world. Famine was slowly destroying China. And the rebellions began. In 1644, the rebels entered Beijing, and the last Ming emperor took his own life. But the real threat came from the north. The Manchus were building a new empire, and the gates of China were opened to the Manchus. In 1644, the Qing Dynasty began. The new emperor was only a child. The Qing regime changed China by force. Cities that resisted were destroyed. And the Qing began ruling all of China. In 1661, Kangxi ascended the throne. Kangxi remained on the throne of China for 61 years. He crushed rebellions and reunified the Qing Empire. He was fascinated by science, especially astronomy and mathematics. And under Kangxi, the Qing once again became one of the world's greatest empires. In 1735, the era of Qianlong began. And the Qing Empire reached the greatest extent in its history. Art, porcelain, and imperial culture reached their peak. But China still believed it had no need for the outside world. In the 1830s, a new war was approaching. Opium addicted millions of people. and China tried to stop the opium trade. But Britain responded with war. The Qing army was unprepared for modern warfare. Britain's industrial power crushed China. In 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed. Hong Kong now belonged to Britain. In 1860, Beijing fell. The Summer Palace was looted and burned. At the same time, China was falling into civil war. The Taiping Rebellion caused the deaths of millions. In 1894, the Qing entered war with Japan. And China collapsed against Japan's modern army. Taiwan was lost. The Qing was humiliated once again. And some believed China needed to change. In 1898, Guangxu launched major reforms. But Cixi refused to give up power. The emperor was imprisoned, the reforms were stopped, and China was thrown into chaos once again. In 1900, the Eight-Nation Alliance marched toward Beijing. In 1900, the armies of Britain, Japan, Russia, Germany, France, America, Italy, and Austria-Hungary advanced toward Beijing. Cixi fled the capital. China was now under the pressure of foreign powers, and the Qing dynasty was living through its final days. China was occupied by foreign armies in its own capital. The Qing dynasty agreed to pay massive reparations, and the Chinese people began losing faith in the empire. Inside the army, revolution was now being discussed. In 1908, Empress Dowager Cixi died, and the Qing dynasty lost its last powerful ruler. The one who ascended the throne was only a small child, Puyi, the last emperor of China. In 1911, the uprising began in Wuchang, and the revolution quickly spread across China. One by one, the provinces broke away from Qing rule. The revolutionaries wanted a new China, a republic. And in the end, Qing generals agreed to surrender. On February 12, 1912, Puyi was removed from the throne, and the 4,000-year-old Chinese Empire came to an end.